Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. This week on the show, I'm joined by Jim Bouchard, an outdoor writer and northern Michigan deer hunter, to discuss rut hunting and gun season tactics for low deer density areas. All right, welcome back to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by First Light and their Camo for Conservation initiative and their brand new line of whitetail gear this year. You can find it all over at firstlight.com. And today's episode is just what you need to hear if you are hunting right now as this podcast drops. This one's coming out on November 14th, 2024, and that means we are right smack dab in the middle of the rut. And for many hunters across the country, just about to kick off gun seasons when things do change. So to help with that, to help with those challenges on the way, with the things that you might have going on right now, I brought on a guest who is brand new to this show, but with a lot of value to add. His name is Jim Bouchard. He is a northern Michigan deer hunter who has been getting it done consistently year after year after year in a really tough place to do that. And I know that because I grew up hunting in northern Michigan with very limited success. And Jim somehow is doing it in similar country with very impressive results, killing mature bucks in places where there just aren't a lot of those kinds of deer. And so I've been watching Jim from afar, trying to figure out how he does it. What's the secret to his success? And how can you kill deer like that in places where, the cards are stacked against you? Low deer densities, big timber, lots of cover, lots of hunters, hard to understand terrain. Whether you hunt in the big woods of Kentucky or southern Ohio or up north in Minnesota or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, there is a lot of the nation that has this set of circumstances. And Jim's tactics are proven to work in those scenarios. So I wanted to get his perspective and to be able to help all of you out there who don't get to have the luxury of hunting thousands of deer across the perfectly manicured farm fields of Illinois or Iowa or Kansas in the Great Plains, whatever it is. That is what today's podcast is all about, and the unique challenges that come by way of gun season, because Jim has been able to enjoy success even after our November 15th opening day of gun season here in Michigan. So Jim not only is a successful hunter, he's also successfully been able to share these stories in Peterson's Bow Hunting Magazine and Bow Hunter Magazine, and does a great job communicating as well. So that is, I'd say, a double whammy for why Jim's going to be a great guest here. Good hunter, good communicator, and relevant information for you here today in mid-November. So I think we should not beat around the bush here. We should get right into the show. I will remind you that if you enjoy our rut hunting tunes, big whitetails, and the most wonderful time to kill deer, they will be at the end of the episode. So some of you may not like it, but I can tell you that my 6-year-old son absolutely loves these songs, and I have to go find them in our episodes of the podcast whenever he wants to listen. So if you have a child who really enjoys these jingles, or if you are a child at heart, like I am, and want to enjoy those songs, they're at the end. They're still here. We are still celebrating the rut because this is the most wonderful time to kill deer. And damn it, I'm going to enjoy it, have a good time with it, and I hope you will too. So, without any further ado, let's get to my chat with Jim Bouchard. All right, here with me on the line for another episode of the Wired Hunt podcast is Jim Bouchard. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Like I was just saying a second ago before we started recording, this podcast is incredibly self-serving today. I'm a very selfish person. I am here for my own personal gains today because I am a aspiring northern Michigan deer hunter. I grew up hunting in northern Michigan, but we didn't do too terribly well up there. And now I've been watching you from afar for years, every year, killing big old bucks in northern Michigan. And I keep scratching my head and wondering, how does he do it? So today we're getting answers, Jim. Okay, I'm hoping you can live up to that.
I hope I can do my best to help you out.
I'm sure you can. And I'm actually leaving for our northern Michigan deer camp tomorrow night. So this is very good timing. I'm actually heading up there to help my dad with a short rut hunt. hoping that he can fill an archery tag up there before our big gun season camp. So, so yeah, we're going to try to turn these ideas around real quick and put them into action.
You betcha.
With that said, what I think I'm curious to set, or what I want to do is set the stage. Like, I understand the situation you're hunting in. I've grown up hunting similar stuff, but I imagine there's a lot of people that can't and haven't done that before. So could you first kind of describe for me what the areas are that you hunt, like what those areas are like, what's the habitat composition like, what are the challenges to hunting in these kinds of places? Because what impresses me about what you do is the situations you're finding success in. This isn't like you're killing deer in Iowa on manicured farm ground like my buddy Dan Johnson. You're doing it in a different kind of place. So can you paint that scene for us?
Yeah. So in this area, it's you have the ag of Michigan, but there's a ton of big woods. And when it comes to hunting up here, the expectations of the size of things, man, you're a Michigan guy. Early on, if it was 3 inches, you were pulling the trigger, which, lifespan, they're so short. So when it comes to expectations, that's the one thing I like about you and Tony in your conversations. It's hunting deer. So giant deer around here. I mean, I was just talking with somebody the other day. The biggest deer I have ever held, it wasn't mine, and I've been hunting my entire life with extremely serious hunting family, is like 142 inches.
It's a giant.
That's a giant, though. That's the biggest I've ever held. So, and that, you go southern Michigan, there's going to be a lot of 140 shot this year and larger, So in this little pocket of the TB area that it's been labeled for a long, long time, there are a lot of hunters. But as far as like even looking at watching television and thinking about 140s, 150s, 160s, it's just not going to happen. I'd love to make it happen, but I really try. But that's just an unrealistic expectation around here.
Yeah. So up there, do you guys have a lot of the like Detroit hunting traffic that's coming up to hunt in your neck of the woods? Is that where a lot of that pressure is come gun season and whatnot, or is it mostly locals?
It like in the area where I live, there's a lot of people that do come up from downstate to this location. And you guys see the trunk slammers, right? I mean, when you're driving in Michigan, it's a migratory state every Friday, Sunday. Yeah. And the thing about me living up here is I'm always doing the opposite. If I'm going downstate, everybody's coming north and vice versa. So in my particular area, is a lot of people that do come from downstate. But in general, it's just like it's the hunting lifestyle. So there's just a lot of people that hunt. So even one of my favorite farms that I hunt, everywhere you look, there's a tower blind. Every food plot in the area that I have has a tent right on it, has a ladder stand on it. So it's just what we do around here. It was a lot more migratory back in the day. As Michigan's turned, it used to be the UP was the jam. Right. That's where you saw the big buck night. That's where they came from. And now it's like totally flip-flop to the opposite side of the state, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, it's just what we do. We hunt here. And there's a lot of people that hunt. Every single field edge has a box on it. So
yeah. So you've got this part of Michigan, northern Michigan, where you have a mix of some ag and some timber and probably some swampy stuff too. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So not too different.
That's it. That's, a lot of cedar and a lot of thick stuff. Yeah. A lot of water.
Right. Water and thick, marshy, cedary, swampy, lots of timber, it's big country, right?
Big country. Yeah. You can, some of the chunks of state land up here are enormous, and federal land, and really unique in the fact that you have federal land right on Lake Huron, which is like awesome up here. And now with the new craze of a lot of public land stuff, there's more pressure than there used to be on those locations. But it's pretty amazing to have that much shoreline that's at your disposal, on that state land.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So here's where I have spent a lot of days scratching my head. when you're looking at especially like big tracts like you're talking about, big state land, big federal land, which there's a lot of that in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, Vermont, Maine, Pennsylvania, southern Ohio. There's a lot of parts of the country that have this big timber or big swamp, lots of woods, vast areas. It's overwhelming in many cases, and because there's not as much diversity, or at least obvious diversity, like you might have in a southern Michigan where there's like field here, a little bit of woods here. It's kind of daunting to try to break it down and figure out, where the heck are these deer? Because on top of that, at least in most of the places I've hunted like this, you've got the big woods or big whatever, but then relatively smaller, relatively lower deer density. So it's you've got a couple needles in a really big haystack that all kind of looks the same. So I got to believe one of the secrets to your success is just breaking that stuff down and finding what to focus on within these vast countries or these big swamps, or these big pieces of timber that are next to your spots or that are your spots. Can you kind of walk me through that to start? Is like, how do you go about breaking down this kind of habitat that's not as obvious as the standard Midwest, Southern Michigan, Ohio, whatever kind of stuff? How do you find deer on these big swaths of sometimes big contiguous timber?
Yeah. I mean, when I have gone into like the Midwest, it's amazing like how easy it is you can narrow down your scouting. There's a spot across the road here where it can be maddening. You can walk an entire day and go, I don't know where I would ever sit here. There's just not a concentration. So when it comes to me breaking it down, I mean, even when it comes to any scouting stuff, it's about just boots. It really is. I mean, you can look at Onyx and it's just a bunch of green, there's some, I mean, it's just a bunch of green, and then, there's topo lines, but it's really, you have to go see it. You have to go see it. And in some cases you have to go experience it, because I know there's historical places where my families have hunted in this federal land where I have gone there and go, I would never sit here in a million years. It's like, so-and-so, they shot a buck here and they shot a buck here. And I'm like, why? There's something about that little ridge and there's something about that creek down there that makes it good. And the only reason they knew is they put their butt there and it worked one time, and then they started to go back. And when it comes to me, I just like, when it comes to scouting, I put a tremendous amount of time. It's all postseason stuff. When I can see and I can just put miles in, and then I have to get the secondary information of the sign that happened in the rut. And me, when it comes wherever I'm going to look, no matter where it is, I go to the thick stuff. I just go thick. And when I see like television, I see some people hunting in parky stuff, it just makes me nervous. I feel like I'd be wasting my time when I see parky stuff. I just rule it out of my brain, because I don't ever really look for it here at all. I just go like, where is it really, really thick? And that's where I'm going to start.
How would you define really thick? Like in your neck of the woods, what does really thick equal? Because I think everyone's got a different definition based on where they're at.
You bet. So most of my hunting companions make fun of me when I send them pictures from my tree stand of how thick it is. I just had the longest shot of my entire life on a whitetail in northern Michigan, and I luckily got an arrow in it. It was 34 yards. That's the longest of my life. Most of I have a single pin roller. It's always at 25. I don't even have to think about it. I am tight and I have a couple shots. So for the most part, I always think about like in your situation with a cameraman, it'd be the worst. It'd be the most boring. You wouldn't even have any good B-roll. It's just trees. You are so claustrophobic. It's not really that enjoyable, I can tell you that. But it's effective for me, and it's just basically what I stick to. I mean, so we're talking extremely thick. I got a couple of shots. I'm not calling deer in from a long range. I'm seeing 25 yards.
Yeah. Okay. So thick that you can see 20, 30 yards max, something like that. And so
cedars, tall grass.
Cedars and tall grass.
Mhm.
All right. So when you're out there scouting, you're putting all these miles on the boots. You're looking for thick stuff, patches
Yep.
like what you just described.
Mhm.
What are the other features or sign that you are trying to key in on when trying to find places worth hunting in this vast terrain?
The other thing is too, so even if it's thick, I don't necessarily have to go a long way for the thick stuff. It can be maybe the overlook thick stuff. So I was just thinking about this, like a perfect example. One of the places I hunted here and shot one of my best bucks on opening day a handful of years ago was a favorite spot for kids to just ride dirt bikes. It was a little duney area. And I literally was probably 100 yards from this little location where this little rise, and everybody tested out their side by sides there, and it was super loud. But this huge ridge dumped over into this perfect little funnel, and it attached two locations. I knew they were high on the ridge with acorns, and they're going down to this swamp. There's people that hunted there, and I would listen to them like discharge their crossbows at night. They're so close to me. I mean, I had people come in with dirt bikes, and the deer would just freeze and let them do their thing. I'd have bird hunters come in and park in this location, and I'd hear them load their dogs, and I'd watch does just pause and watch them. They couldn't see them, but it was tall grass, really low, like 8 foot, like spruce and stuff, and the deer just used it all the time. It looked silly. I was so afraid of people seeing me in there because like this looks ridiculous and it's so easy to get to. I thought somebody would take the spot, but I shot one of my best bucks, 100 yards away from where people love to try their dirt bikes. But it's nice and thick, and it connected two places where they wanted to go.
Was there any like deer sign within that when you first
Yep.
discovered it that made you say it? Because I gotta imagine like you see something like that, like the terrain itself, and you say, like, oh, hey, Oak Ridge leads down to a swamp, little tight spot. Like, okay, this makes sense, but it's also right next to this highly used area. What was it that confirmed for you? Like, yeah, this is worth my time.
It was full of rubs, and it seemed like it was full of rubs, and kind of like what I said with my uncles. I said, you know what, I got to give this a shot. So I sat it, and then I eventually narrowed things down because I saw activity, and they just really stuck to the cedars. I watched bucks spar in there, and they left a lot of sign. And I think it was almost like a little bit of a staging area where, even though it was by people, they just felt really protected in there. You couldn't see them. Even if you got to the top of the berm where the people were riding bikes, you could not see them in there. So they were comfortable. And that was when I used to use trail cameras, and that might be another subject you want to talk about. I used the trail cameras to narrow down, like, will they use this trail eventually that I was sitting on? And the one guy made a mistake. The sad part about that whole story is it was one of my favorite spots, and it was basically turned into a parking lot. They like clear cut it like 2 years after I shot that buck. So totally gone. Turned into like a moonscape. Yeah, it is a bummer.
The sign thing is of interest to me because at least where I hunt in my part of northern Michigan, and when I've hunted other big timber areas, like I've hunted something kind of like this in Arkansas, kind of like this in Alabama, some other places like that, northern Minnesota, and there's just not the same deer numbers that we have in Illinois, Iowa, southern Michigan. And when I am looking for a good area here in southern Michigan, I'm looking for a lot of sign. Like, I mean, scrapes everywhere, like big, huge rubs, like over and over and over. And I need that level of concentration to convince me that this is the spot. But when you hunt a big woods place with lower deer densities, I'm starting to learn like a little bit means a lot more in those zones. Is that what you found, or how would you define like what's enough sign for you to care when you're looking in your area?
So when it comes to sign here, sometimes when there's a lot of sign, I stay away from it because I just went up the other day. I was fortunate to shoot a buck on the second day of season here, and I was like, I'm going to do a little quick scout and check out some of the scrapes that I found in the winter. Went and checked them all out, and a lot of the like ridge top, open scrape rubs was camera, ladder. It's like, well, all right, don't even pay attention to that. So going back down, like I said, where's the thick stuff? And then is there a couple rubs in there, maybe a scrape? Like they're using it, just stick it out here because as you know, I mean, even in southern Michigan, the odds of a good buck moving in daylight are very, very minimal, especially up here. And the higher percentage is going to be right at the crack of daylight and dusk. So where are they going to be? It's not going to be anywhere near food. It's not going to be anywhere near those dished out scrapes on top of the ridge, especially with cameras and ladders by them. It's going to be really, really close to their bed. And that's why I spent all my time there. Even like early on in season, the only time they're going to be on their feet is when they're close to bed. And I just got them on the way out, and I just got them on the way back in. Unless I get lucky like I did the other night and they're rutting a little bit. But
that's nice when that happens.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, give me some more detail on the other things you're looking for when you're scouting. So it sounds like you're looking for the obvious, the thickest stuff. You're looking for standard deer sign and maybe not the most concentrations of them, more so like the off the radar, smaller spots near the thick. Is there anything else when you're out there scouting that tells you like, okay, yes, this is an area?
Yeah. So the one thing when it comes to looking at those particular areas is you think about like where are they going to feel safe and where can they escape multiple areas? Because another big thing that I come into contact with here is a tremendous amount of bird hunters. So there's a lot of grouse hunters and they pound the ground from the 15th through December. And a lot of the good bedding areas, when they do the little timber cuts and things like that, are like the best bedding areas for like whitetails and the best areas for grouse and woodcock. These deer are getting jumped all the time. I mean, they're getting bumped from their bed all the time. So I like to go in those spots where like they have multiple accesses to. It's going to be the place where they just feel like the most safe. So I look at where I know a lot of guys bird hunt. Where do a lot of the deer, where are they going to go? And what makes the most sense to be safe when you're constantly being jumped? And I think, it's not like new information. People talk about it all the time, but when they survive being jumped multiple times, I think they just like, okay, that worked. So I just look for those spots that make the most sense where you're going to survive with that much disruption on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
So like you said, there's not going to be a ton of scrapes there. Those are all where up on the ridges where everybody's got their cell cameras on. I'm looking for, there's a handful of rubs going into just this nasty pocket of grass or something like that.
What about just edges? How important are edges to you? Because that's something I've started trying to key in on up in our area. Yeah. There's not as many obvious edges, but I've started wondering like, are these back in the timber edges of a deciduous forest and a cedary pocket, or the edges of a cedary pocket and then cattail area? Are they using those edges almost like a travel corridor down? For me in southern Michigan, it might be a thin strip of timber as a funnel, but in northern Michigan, maybe it's just the edge of swamp and high ground, and they're traveling along that in a similar fashion. Can you tell me if that's something that factors in at all? And if so, what are you looking at?
I think that's paramount. I mean, that's huge. Like you have to find that little teeny, I don't care if it's a soft, like first obviously is, creeks and waterways and stuff that's automatically going to shove stuff, locations. The little teeny differences are just like huge. And up here, they do a lot of like cutting. So things can rotate. Like I was just talking about one of my favorite stands, I can't remember how many acres, created all, a bunch of new edges, right? But even down the thick stuff, like it turns from cedar to like tall grass. It turns from cedar to like spruce. It turns from cedar to a popple cut, a little teeny rise, those things, my eyes just go to them, and I think like you said, like it makes a world of difference because usually when there's a change, there is some sort of sign there. So it's like, that's absolutely paramount. That's why when I see the big parky stuff in the federal land, I just wander and go like, I have no idea where I would ever go here. And that's why I never do. I just stick to, I love looking for the features. They show the way.
All right. So let's imagine November arrives and you do not have both buck tags filled already. You do right now. You're one of the lucky few Michigan hunters that has both your buck tags filled. You've had a great season.
Yeah.
But let's say you've got tags still in your pocket. November is here. Can you describe to me a couple of your ideal November ambush locations in detail? Like paint a couple pictures for me. I'd love to hear like the kind of spot that you find and that you spend some quality time in November.
A very large chunk of my rut locations are based on water. I know with water, there's going to be funnels automatically. Yeah, they do cross water, of course, but there's going to be marsh grass. I like going to places where they disappear to, or the bigger bucks in the area, they feel more comfortable pursuing. Like, sure, you're going to see the random one running across fields, chasing those, but that just does not happen very often. So just like I was saying, I find rivers, I find water, and I like to go to areas where, like, when it comes to either, lockdown or whatever, the bigger bucks don't mind chasing in there. The does will be in there, and they'll actually be more active chasing. So like recently, that deer I shot just the other day, it's early. I mean, it was 2 days ago. I mean, it's relatively early. I mean, it's pre-rut, of course, but he was bird dogging just like a dog looking for his tennis ball in the backyard. After a 4-point came through with a doe, he came through 5 minutes later, and he was trying to find her. But I was in thick stuff, He wasn't like venturing out on an oak ridge, exposing himself. He was down in it. So if I'm going to rut hunt, all my spots are extremely funnel specific. Always look for water. Most of my rut spots always have at least a creek, a river, or something. And I am where they're going to funnel down because, you're a numbers nerd when it comes to, I've seen your spreadsheets and all that stuff. I mean, it really is.
Guilty.
You're playing the odds. So like, where am I going to be and where am I going to be able to kill a big one? Because not only does he have to be here, but he also has to be within range of me to get him. So I know you were talking about it earlier this year about shrinking your range, like your actual archery range to eliminate some of the variables, So not only do I have to find where an actual shooter is going to hang out, but I also want to make sure because you get one shot. Like I figure like in a year, I'm probably going to have one shot. And that'll be a great year if I get a shot, which is totally different from a lot of other people that are entering the hunting world. Like literally been planning all year long for maybe drawing the bow back once. It better be near me. I better be able to kill it. So I don't sit in a location where I get to see a buck 200 yards off, dogging a doe or something. Like if I got to be where he is, and he's going to be right there, and I got to be able to have a chance to kill it. So rivers help me, and topography's got to get him near that tree I'm in.
Help me understand what a funnel, so near a river or creek, what's a funnel look like in that situation that you're keying in on during the rut? Is it, when you say a funnel, is it literally the cover pinches down around that? Or is it like, I don't know. Tell me more.
Yeah. One location I hunt has it's an old cattle pasture. So it literally has an old overgrown fence in autumn olive that for the most part is impenetrable. It's been there for years and years and years and creates a gap about 10 yards wide to a river that drops down. So, I mean, it's a literal block. And I know if I sit there long enough, because the timber that connects these larger farms, they're going to go by there. I just got to be there, and I had to be in the right tree, and I had to be ready for it. So it's a literal wall of autumn olive and wire, and then a river. So it's a very literal funnel. But like the one I was sitting in the other day, it's a transition from cedar, spruce to opens up to a little bit of like tall grass and like that scraggly popple and something that's really changed things up here. I believe it's happened down there too, like the ash trees, right? All your ash trees are basically the mature ones have been falling for, what is it?
Yeah.
Almost 10 years now. Totally opened the canopy up in weird spots in swamps. So some of my spots I've been hunting for years, it's amazing how different they look because they're predominantly ash and then pine. all those ash have died, and now we get a lot of grass, because it's getting sunlight now. So where I was hunting the other day was just a change from cedar and spruce to tall grass and like new popple, and finding like beds along the line, like right underneath the cedars, matting down that grass around that edge is where I was. So it's an edge within a swamp is what I was hunting the other day.
Yeah. I read one of your pieces and you were describing a tight cedar funnel. and I see cedars all over the place where I hunt, but I don't know if I've ever found a cedar funnel. I'd be curious to hear what you meant by that and what I'm missing.
So it's literally, in some cases, it's like, so there's ridges around where I live, and basically at the bottom of this ridge, it goes straight from cedar and a little creek to straight popple and then up to oak. So there's literally just a little band of cedars running right down the bottom of this valley that eventually gets into a larger band of cedars, so that the cut was probably 15 years ago, so they left the cedar down there, and now it's all popple that's really high now with the sporadic oak. So it's 20 yards wide of cedar on the bottom of this, and it goes about 100 yards back into a larger group of cedar. So it's literally a tight little.
and so have you found, like, inside a forest where there's maybe mostly deciduous forest, and then you have these pockets of cedars or strips of cedars, do you see that the deer will prefer to travel along and or bed in those pockets of cedars where you have that just different thing?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I mean, like the edges, like those little edges, like we were talking about earlier, at least you're going to see they're going to drop a scrape there and the point of that, or check that edge, because does will be hanging out there, because the bird hunters had pushed them out of the popple cuts and they headed down into all the deadfalls and under the cedars to get out of the way, because they're probably going to stick to the popple for woodcock and stuff like that. So that's literally where you'll find that, the couple meaningful scrapes and rubs down there,
Yeah. Do you hunt any places that are so thick so much of the time that it's like impossible to decide where the best thick stuff is or where the bedding is, because it all seems like it could be? That's something I've encountered in parts where, like, there's so much swamp, there's so much of this thick edge and stuff that it's just endless. And then I'm looking at it all and saying, well, where the heck how do you pick a spot within this massive area of thick? And I almost start thinking, like, maybe you're looking for the opposite. You're looking for the opening in the thick, because that makes it different. Yeah. Is that something you have any experience with?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of challenges that come with hunting thick stuff. There's been a couple spots where I said, like, okay, this is the only literal place they can walk through here. And then I'll see them going through where I thought it was impossible. Like the weird cedar deadfalls. Like, how do they even get through there? You think they'd have to avoid and go by me, and they don't. A lot of my spots too, if I go set them up in like late summer, they look ridiculous, because you get up there and the smaller trees still have their leaves on it, and it's like, how do I even shoot anything in here? But once the leaves kind of fall down, like, okay, now we have an option. So up here, like you said, there are some giant swamps. And the only way you can kind of find out, I mean, a lot of trial and error, like work your way in, like, okay, that's 2 times in a row they've gone over there. Let's go see why they have. Making an adjustment. You're like, okay, there's 2 deadfalls, 2 root balls that make like a little channel, and they like that one. So that's a big aspect, because it can be just like the Parky Forest. Some of these cedar swamps up here, it's like, okay, just a long way. And even when you think you have it narrowed down, no, they'll go right through that crap too. So you have to find like the little mini travel corridors through there. And that's what helps in the spring. That's why I always go out in the spring and late winter, because they're a little more matted down.
Yeah. What about cuts? You've mentioned cuts a couple times, and that's one of the first things I think a lot of guys can kind of wrap their head around when they're hunting big timber areas. It's like, okay, that seems obvious. There's been some form of cut there. We have some form of sunlight reaching the floor. We have some kinds of edges. How do those factor into your rut strategy?
Huge, because they leave a couple oaks in there, and this year we actually have some acorns. It's been 3 years without acorns, which really changes things around here. There's spots where I hunt, I might as well sit in Walmart parking lot if there's not acorns. If there's acorns, it's going to be a good year in this little spot because they will bed and they'll use this ridge. If there's no acorns, don't even bother setting a stand. You're wasting hours. So the thing about the cuts that are unique is they leave those big oaks. And so maybe, you have the tall grass. They love eating the popple shoots also. And then when the popple would drop their leaves, you still have these giant oaks that are there raining acorns. It makes it difficult to hunt because you can't set up in there. So then you fall back to the edge. So it can be a little maddening sometimes because you can see them in there. You can see them chasing in there, but they stay there. They don't come out of it because they have everything they need. They have cover, they have food, they have bedding, they can hang out and then in the does like it. They have, the acorns in there later on. It makes it for me like that's what makes that one spot of mine so disheartening. I mean, you basically can't hunt that spot for years and years and years until those popples get big and a bunch die and it starts to park again. So you're left with that edge. And it can be very difficult because I was just talking to one of my friends today. He's got a spot. He's seen a couple of nice shooters, but they just don't come out of there, and you can't get a stand in there.
So is it worth hunting the edge at all in hopes that you can pull them out? Can you call them out? Do they ever cruise that edge, or do they check the downwind side of it during the rut? Is that effective ever?
The downwind side, and then if you can find that spot where maybe they want to go cut to cut. Like maybe they need to check things out. They need to travel. So sometimes these cuts will come and they'll stop a cut where it's an old mature ridge. So they'll belly around that mature ridge and stay to that one little point rather than going over the top. They stay around that point and they stick to that particular part of the cut, So once again, finding that little bit of differentiation within these cuts, maybe like I said, that little tight cedar funnel pops into one. Now you got a cedar tree you can sit in. And they're going to go around that point of that, usually have a scrape on the end of it. So like the minor differentiation is huge with those. So yeah, it can be maddening. You can see them and hear them out there, but if you can find that one little thing that makes them want to go maybe to another cut, a little teeny corridor that attaches two cuts, that's what you have to look for.
All right. So differentiation around clear cuts, finding some of these interior edges, the thickest stuff we can find, any kind of funnel, especially around water. Are there any other major rut type locations that you really like to key in on during the month of November that we haven't covered yet?
I do like going, I always like going near their beds, but I like to go where I feel like they're not risking it trying to go find another doe. Like I think they like to find them around here where they know they're not putting themselves in danger. I've seen a lot of awesome or heard a lot of rut activity because I can't see them, which is another bad part about being thick. I've heard a lot of them chasing in those swamps because I think they just feel comfortable in there. They're not exposing themselves. Does do lay in there. And then sometimes when they find that hot doe, they can kind of maybe hide. They can get into one of those pockets and maybe have them to themselves, because it is so thick, they're not risking it. Right. So I love being, some of my favorite spots, like that one fence I was talking about. It's super, super thick on the back of a cattle pasture. They're not going to walk across that pasture during the day. They have that one little area that they can get through to go to another chunk of property. It's stopped by an elbow of a river. It's literally blocked by a wall of autumn olive. They're going to come look for us. They're going to come through there and go transfer from farm to farm through that little teeny spot. And I feel like they're just comfortable chasing in there. They're not exposing themselves. Even like the guy I shot the other night. It's early on, he was acting really silly for a mature buck up here, but I don't think he felt like he was exposing himself. He felt like he was free to rein in there without being in danger.
What about when gun season hits? So when this episode airs, it should be airing November 14th. So there's going to be a lot of folks listening to this right as gun season's kicking off in Michigan and many other states. Their gun seasons kick off middle of November or late November. Thanksgiving is coming up soon. This is a time when a lot of people and a lot of things are shifting gears in the woods. Do your hunt locations change during the gun season, or is it more of the same because you're already in thick stuff? So
very similar to my longest archery shot being, just over 30 yards. My longest rifle shot is 70.
I love it. I love it.
70 yards with the old carbine, 30-06. It's when it comes to rifle, where are they gonna go? I mean, honestly, it's kind of weird to think, but right around like 1:00 on November 15th, it's like, well, deer are done doing deer things where I live. It's over. I mean, it really is. Now, yeah, you might catch one rutting here and there, but when it comes to like feed to bed, patterning is done. I mean, deer doing deer things, that is straight up over. So when it comes to rifle, it's like, where are they hiding? It's just like, where are they running away? You're basically hunting hunters is what I'm doing. Like, where are they going to run when the melee takes place for that first day? So it's, I guess you could say, more of the same. But I am not even, I guess you consider sign. I'm just looking for where they're going to go to hide.
And is there anything else other than just the thickest stuff that they find as being the hiding spots?
Well, that's where you really get into who's going to walk. That's where you can really separate yourself. Like where with the bow season, I'll look for those maybe little hidey holes that aren't that far of a walk. It's just actually a good location for them to go. That's where you can start differentiating yourself. Up here is like, how far are you willing to walk? And how far are you, like, let's think walking around in the dark, finding these swamp spots. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. So if you're willing to do that, you can separate yourself from some other individuals. And that's where I think you can really make your mark, is like, how far are you willing to go into that hellhole to get away from everybody else? Yeah. So that's when I really consider that.
Yeah, and it's a little different hiking in a northern Michigan or northern Minnesota deep, dark, sketchy swamp than it is walking along a cornfield edge. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Or dragging it out. Dragging it out. That's the other thing is one of my favorite rifle spots that I've had some luck over the last couple of years. It's an absolute nightmare to get a deer out. A nightmare. So not many people just rule it out right there. Like, I'm not going down there. I could never get out.
So other than going to the darkest, nastiest, hard to get to hellholes during gun season, is there anything else unique you're doing once gun season hits? Are you hunting different hours, longer hours, shorter hours? Are you doing anything different tactic-wise? I don't know what that might be, but is there anything unique on the gun side of things?
That's the other thing too that's like disappointing is, when it comes to the rifle season up here, why bother bring a grunt call? Why bother do all those other things? It's just you're at the mercy of what everybody else is doing. And the other thing about being up here as well, as you know, with your family deer camp, is that there's historical spots, right? I mean, no matter what property you're going to, that's where so-and-so hunts. That's where so-and-so hunts. That's where so-and-so hunts. And it's just like things have been established. It's kind of funny around here, even on state land, it's like, we don't go there because that's where those guys go. We don't go there because that's where they go. And we're in the area where I hunt around my house. It's extremely established. It's like finding a spot's difficult because until somebody dies or gives up, you know what I mean? It's like just dies or like quits. It's like, well, we just don't go there. They've been there since they were 16. No, okay, we don't go there. And so it's kind of unique because rifle season is such a tradition. It's like, well, you can't even worry about wind because you have your spot, for the most part. Because I was just looking at one of your recent articles while you're sitting in camp. It's like, you don't even worry about wind. It's like, because I'm going to sit in my spot because I have nowhere else to go because everybody else has been established around in my camp or whatever. So it's such a different game for me when the bow goes in the case. It's just like, all right, here we go with the rifle and we'll see what happens, which is always why it's just so depressing. I mean, it's somewhat depressing for me. It turns into more of families there, buck pulls are the main deal, and hopefully I can be one that it was my turn.
Yeah, I follow you. Okay, so zooming out of gun season and just to November in general. All day sits, yes or no?
Yeah, if I have the opportunity, if it's right, like last November, I was planning on sitting all day, and I think I shot November 2nd, shot 11:30. I shot the buck last year. And then last year, rifle season, I think I shot mine at 12:30. So November 15th, 12:30, November 2nd, 11:30, I shot those deer. So the typical hunt until 10, I would have been still holding on to my tags. So those are both midday deer right there just in the last year. So when it's the time here, especially like I said, the spots I like, they feel as comfortable as they can feel cruising those areas when it comes in November. So if I can, I do it. The hardest part is I got to pick the right personal day, and it's hard to do when you're looking at the weather. It's like, okay, when is the weather going to match for me to sit all day and try to pick those days?
So what is that kind of day? Like I can make some assumptions, but I'd love to hear from you specifically. What's the kind of the conditions, the date, what's it have to be for you to say, okay, I'm going to use the vacation day or use the, hey, family, sorry, I got to hunt today card.
Yeah. So like last weekend, in Michigan, it was highs in the 40s. It was a Sunday morning. It was 24 degrees up here in the morning.
Nice.
And it was like the overcast, really bucky stuff. I mean, that's the stuff, if you're a hunter, you can look on the map and go, high at 24, overcast, 5 mile an hour steady wind, 5 to 10, perfect, This week, 75, it was 70 something here today.
Yeah.
I think on Friday, it's going to be a high of 42 up here, after 3 days in the 70s. Let's, that big change, get out there. But I just had a buddy text me before we went on. It's the most deer he's seen this year, tonight, and it was 70 something here as far as deer numbers. No shooters, but he saw the most deer. So I mean, it's always a crapshoot. But if I have the chance to, like this Friday, I was actually going to take a personal day to go hunting because it's 3 days of rain and hot, and it was down in the 40s again. I had my personal day planned, and luckily I didn't pull the trigger.
Didn't need it.
I kept it in the bank.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Okay. That all makes sense. I'm tracking with that. And here's the next kind of related thing.
Yeah.
Which is when you hunt all day, you're committing to a location and you're giving it time and you're hoping for that midday movement. And something I found, and really I've debated this even in high deer density areas, but I think it's even more important in low deer density areas, like any kind of big woods habitat or the northern, any part of the really upper Midwest, upper Northeast, those types of places, is how much time you give a specific location, right? There's a tendency, especially now with everyone it being so trendy to be mobile, there's the tendency to want to bounce around a lot. Like I tried this spot this morning, I should try somewhere new in the evening, and tomorrow I'm going to try a new place. I'm always going to keep the deer on their toes. I'm going to surprise them. And right, it's the exact opposite of what it used to be, where you would camp out in one spot forever. Cause like you described during gun season, where some people still do that, but and I worry sometimes I even go too far that way, where I move too much and I don't give a spot enough time. How do you think about that? How do you balance giving a place enough time versus moving around?
So, I mean, I'm not the oldest guy in the world. There's guys that put a lot more time in than myself, but I guess I've learned through time that it just like it pays to be patient. And like some of my spots, even if some of my favorite spots, even if I've blown something out of there, I feel like deer are jumped so much, it doesn't make me panic as much. So one of my spots I've shot the most of my larger bucks out of, there's some years where it's just brutal. And I have no idea why, because it's around pasture and it connects some ag. Some years it's just amazing. And some years like I get skunked. I mean, I'll be skunked 5 times in a row. And then I'll go 2 years where I sat there once and shot a dandy, and I sat there another time and shot a dandy, and then I'll go another year, I'll get skunked 5 times. Being skunked where I live and being skunked in my spots is not atypical. Not only am I really, really in tight quarters, which means you're not going to see much, I get skunked a lot. I mean, so let's see, I sat 7 times this year, and I think 3 of those times I saw deer. So 4 out of those times I didn't see anything.
So hold on.
But I'm out of tags though too.
I was gonna say, so you only saw deer on 3 hunts and you killed a good buck on 2 out of the 3. That's pretty good batting percentage.
Yeah, I mean it's
but then 4 complete blanks.
Complete blanks. Yeah, not even in the game. It felt like I was the only person out there, just total dead. And that honestly kind of just sounds like all my seasons. Just nothing, and then shot one. That's very typical for me.
So how do you?
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. It's just
Yeah. So how do you know when to stay versus when to go? Like, do you have a set? Like, I know some people have, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Steve Shirk or someone like that who hunts big woods in Pennsylvania, or someone else like that who kind of said like three days per spot, or at least 2 days. And if nothing happens in 2 days, well, then I'm pulling out. Like, do you have a rule or is it something different for you?
I don't necessarily have a rule. I kind of just use the gut and like that self-talk, which every hunter has. Like, it's going to happen. It's happened to you a million times. Eventually it's going to work out. And one of the things that I kind of attribute that helps me with that is the time I spend with like trapping. I spend a lot of time trapping in the winter, and I actually wrote about that, which is kind of weird having a trapping article in a bow hunting magazine.
Yeah.
But it builds your callus up for just failure. Every time I think I got stuff set up that's going to be great, I walk up to empty stuff. It's like, all right, well, next time it's going to be full. And then you have 2 traps that are empty. Like next time, it's just, I guess I can take a punch or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it helps train me to, you've done this before, you've skunked 3 times, but all it takes is that one sit. So if it just doesn't feel like, if it gets desperate, I might do like a quick little skull, like, okay, I got to see what's on the ground. I got to see, like, is it really being, used at all? And that's why, like I said, a couple of spots, if without acorn, I learned that, the hard way, like, okay, that looking in my notes, acorn year, great. Non-acorn year, total waste of time. So don't even do it this year. It looks nice. You shot a deer there last year, but there's no acorns. Don't bother. So, and this is where a lot of people can use cameras too, to really, that can be a boost in the mood.
Right. So you said you don't use cameras anymore.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Well, I used it a handful of years ago, and they're really effective. And I've been taking in outdoor media content since I was a little kid. I mean, whatever I could watch, whatever I could read. I always have been a magazine guy. I've always been a hunting movie guy, from Monster Bucks to Dan Fitzgerald here in Michigan. You got to go Dan Fitzgerald, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, VHS stuff, consumed all those things. So I still consume it a lot. And for me, watching some of the things on television now, I feel like it's surveillance. I mean, I literally listened to a guy talk about how if he didn't have his camera go off within the next half hour, he's going to get out of his stand, because if it comes that late, he'll probably just spook it anyway. Or you see those they're like, oh, that camera went off, we're going to stick it out. It just feels a little icky to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong. They're ridiculously effective, to the point where it's just like, I kind of like going back to the total surprise of, I did my work. This looks like a great spot. It feels good. Let's see if I'm right, which is not as effective as using cameras, but I like it. Like I said, this is all I have for my hunt all year. I have whitetail in Michigan every, 12 years, maybe bear, turkey hunting, squirrel, that kind of stuff. Like, my big game adventure is deer. So I kind of like the surprise. I mean, the last 2 years, every buck I've shot, no idea who they were. First time I ever laid eyes on them, I killed them. That's it. And the typical response is, got any pictures of this guy or whatever? Like, nope, nothing. First time I saw him, I shot him,
I can see the appeal to that. I can definitely see the appeal to that. And it's funny, I have more and more conversations as of late with folks who are kind of debating a similar change, or switching away from cell cameras back to traditional cameras at least, or putting self-imposed regulations of some kind on how they use cell cameras. I do something like that just because it does seem like it's getting more and more something that's not quite hunting. So
it's not, I don't think it's wrong. It was very, like one year that I used them, it helped me solve the riddle. And I had 2 great kills that year. And it really helped me narrow those things down. That was pre-cell camera. But it just seems just a little odd now that on 80 acres, 100 acres, so many cameras on them. I mean, where I hunt, I was talking to my buddies the other day, you almost have to be careful where you take a leak anymore. It's
right.
I mean, it's like there's a scrape. I know I'm going to find a camera on it. In front of every ladder, there's a camera on it. On the trails I'm walking, there's cameras. I mean, I can't imagine how many pictures there are of me around here when it comes to scouting and stuff. So it just feels weird. And I know they're really intriguing. It's fun to watch. They take the coolest pictures. It narrows things down. They motivate you. Like, I didn't see anything last night. They did move. They are here. And I think the other part too that would drive me nuts with cell cameras is, and I'd have a hard time swallowing it, is if I picked a spot and I got real-time proof that they're at the other spot. That would just hurt me so bad. I'd rather I don't want to know. I don't even want to know.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know.
I set mine on a 24-hour delay so that I never have to have that feeling. I'm never tempted to do something that's like real time that make me feel icky.
Yeah.
That's been the best way I've found to do it. But yes, having more separation, I think, is better, personally, at least, just for me.
Yeah, I like the mystery. I like feeling like a little kid. That's the best part.
Yeah. So kind of along these, not quite the same, but a little bit of a similar theme of sorts. I've heard you write about the importance of seat equity. And I think a lot of people with cell cameras, especially, you get more and more people who are like, I'm not going to hunt because my buck isn't even daylighting yet on camera. Or it used to be just like, weather's bad or something, I'm not going to go hunt. And now it's become like nobody wants to hunt unless their target buck is daylighting right where they can hunt him. And otherwise, like, I'm going to wait till he shows up. You have a different approach. You advocate for seat equity. Can you tell me why that's so important, especially in November?
Yeah. I mean,
and what do you mean by that? Define that too.
I mean, you learn by doing. I'm a reps guy. I played a lot of sports and I play guitar, and the only way I ever got better is just hours and hours and hours of doing it. In hunting, in trapping, and that sort of thing, the more you are out there, the more things are going to happen, even when they're not desirable, and stuff that just doesn't make any sense happens. And if you're there, you get to capitalize. And it's happened to me enough to make me just go, you gotta go. And I don't get weeks off. I get a couple days off. I get a weekend. Like, hey, kids don't have anything going on. We got Wednesday night. I got Friday night, and I'm going. And I'm going to go. And because I put in time, crazy things that didn't make sense turned out for a dead deer. I mean, a perfect example of this, on October 2nd, I had a deer, which I'm sure you've seen, like fawns that get the zoomies.
Yeah.
They just run for fun.
Just running. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a half hour before dark. I heard something running out of the river. And it was a buck, a shooter buck. It ran one lap around me, ran back out in the river. It ran another loop, and it looked like it was trying to pivot around my tree like he was doing like an exercise. It did 3 laps around me, and on the 4th lap, I basically yelled at it and shot it at 18 yards, and it died 40 yards from me.
Wow.
That made no sense. It made no sense. It was 70-some degrees, but I was sitting. And if I wasn't sitting, I wouldn't see that ridiculous activity, and it resulted in a dead buck. And the things that you just learn from being out there, screwing up, sitting on a bad wind, forcing a spot, you just like build up that equity of eventually he is going to come here, or you're picking up more tactics that, okay, that just didn't work. That was silly. I shouldn't have done that. Or you get that buck with the zoomies, and he showed up in front of me, or a coyote jumped something. I mean, I've killed enough things that didn't make any sense that it makes it worthwhile for me to go. And you learn every time. You always learn, I mean, it's just, you learn by screwing up.
That's the truth.
And hunting's fun. I mean, hunting's fun. I mean, geez, Pete's. I mean, I only get so many times, so like I'm going, I mean, it's a blast, so I'm going to go out there and give it a whirl,
Yeah, man, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, then, you mentioned that you have this experience as a trapper, and you've alluded to how that's helped you as a whitetail hunter.
Yeah.
Are there any specific examples of things from trapping that you have then kind of applied into the whitetail world that have helped you?
Yeah. Funnels, I mean, water, edges, cover. You have to get an animal to go through this or whatever it might be. So it is the same exact mindset. I mean, I basically am carrying the same mindset all year long. I'm just changing genres. I'm looking at that edge. What is going to make that animal go here? And how do I get something there? Either at my tree stand, or how do I get a 330 in that spot that's going to make that animal go there? So kind of along like the seed equity thing, you're basically like constantly training your brain to look for that stuff. I'm sure you do this too. When you drive around, when you look at a woodlot, you're like, ooh.
Always.
Oh, like that. Oh, that would be, I'd have to go check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm walking the woods, when you're a trapper, I mean, you're looking for tracks all the time. You learn things because you're always looking at the ground. You learn about failure. And just like any good like fisherman, you fish with those guys that just catch fish.
Yeah, fishy dudes.
Yeah, it's just like they know where to cast. They know what water to forget about. It's like because they've just seen it enough. So the trapping is what's done that for me. Is like I am constantly in that mindset of like, what is differentiating this spot to get an animal through there? How do I get them? And it's just constantly making my brain do that. And I think it's very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just the serendipity of just being outside enough, you just see things and learn things that you never would expect. I got to believe by trapping, you're spending that many more days out there. You happen to run across a great deer run, or you happen to find a shed antler, or you find a buck bed, or who knows what stuff you find when you're out there. But I bet you found some stuff that's helped, like practically too.
Yeah, literally. And talk about a good way to get permission. One of the spots I hunted, I helped a farmer out with his irrigation with beavers. He had spent a bunch of money on an excavator to come in there. Didn't work. I said, just give me a couple days. I'll get him out of there, and then you'll be problem solved. I got permission and to hunt that farm, or additional permission to hunt that farm as a result of helping that farmer out. And the other thing that you have to learn as a bow hunter, especially up here when it's just low density, is you have to learn failure, and you got to learn to take it, make a minor adjustment, and try again. And that's trapping to a T. Tons of failure. You're usually going to mess out.
Okay. I want to run through a couple last things before we run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of gonna make this a little like rapid fire.
Sure.
So real quick, calling in relatively low deer density areas like this, in big woods or big swamp, does it work better because there's so few deer that when they do hear one, they want to come in, and because that's a rare special thing? Or does it work less frequently because they're just not hearing many calls, so they're actually wigged out by that?
What I found here is the only time I ever call is basically when I need to, when I see one or need to turn one. The bonus of being in thick stuff is they have to look. You know what I mean?
They got to come closer.
They got to come see you. So that's the bonus. Hunting open stuff. Guys are growing on field edges. They can just go, nothing there. In my stuff, the bonus of when I do grunt, they typically, I got to go take a peek. Not all bucks, but I got to go take a peek. I don't blind call at all. None. I don't. I did rattle a little bit when I was in college in Central Michigan. I actually shot, guy, just a little dinky 6-point, but he came sprinting like the hunt was 15 minutes long. I was just trying it for fun. I was bored. Sprinting, and I shot this little 6-point, sparring early on in October. But I have never blind called up here successfully, so I just ditched it. The only thing that I use, the grunt call is always there because I've shot a lot of bucks with a couple grunts because they were avoiding my tight area. I got a glimpse of antler, couple grunts, brought them to me, and I killed them. That is the only success I've had with calling. I don't use it to bring anything in without me seeing it first.
When you say a couple grunts, is it just like a little content? There's like a bark, or are you doing like a roar or a snort wheeze or anything?
Just
bigger?
a grunt, and then that's it. Because I feel, that's the one thing I've learned about all my scouting in the spring as well. When you wander around and it's like scent wick, dripper that people leave in the trees, cans left on the ground, grunt calls. I know there's guys out there letting it rip all year. They got dome heat out there in early October. They're grunting. They're, using the can. I just avoid it. I want to be in a spot where just like I got their attention. I kind of want them to go like, what was that? And then I want to check it out. I don't push it because I just feel it just gives me away. It doesn't sound natural.
Yeah, makes
because
sense.
Like the other day with that 4-point that was chasing that doe, that was not just a grunt. It was accompanied with cracking timber, 2 deer running. It was a whole. I can't do that with just a grunt, right. But that was just, and that's it. I just wanted to like, hey, there's a buck over there. Come check it out. So I usually just a couple little ones to get them my attention and make them interested.
Yeah. All right. What about access and like entry and exit routes? That's something that we worry about so much in ag country down south, but especially like in the big woods areas that you hunt. You it's not like you can avoid the cover going in or out.
Yeah.
Everything's cover when you come in and out.
Yeah.
Everything's loud when you come in and out because you're walking through branches and leaves and swamp grass or whatever. So do you have some way that you try to have a safe entry and exit, or do you just like rip the Band-Aid off and blast your way into these places just knowing like, hey, it's going to happen?
Well, in some cases, like I know you followed here, and one of our fellow people that we pay a lot of attention to being Michigan guys, you got John, John Eberhardt. Getting in there early, even if you jump something, you let it cool down. Getting in there early is paramount. And around here, like I hate jumping things. It is the worst. Access is a very important thing. But like you said, if I'm going to sit here, the only good thing is when I get there, it's like, since it's so close to bed, there shouldn't be too much around there yet. That is the bonus. And I don't hunt around fields very often. So I know I'm not bumping things there. So like, yes, I keep in mind, that's basically why I keep food in mind, because I never hunt the food at all. I mean, I just honestly never really hunt food unless it's close to bedding. I just need to know where it is so I can avoid it where I get in that bed. And then usually when I leave at night, I knew where they went. I got to get out of there without them. So I don't have to worry about busting the field. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff because they should be kind of long gone by the time I leave. So that is kind of a bonus,
Yep.
But it is hard to sneak in there in the morning without busting stuff. But you just hope that you're there first.
Yeah. But man, every one of those like frosty leaf crackling steps, especially on like that still freezing cold day when everything seems to echo a mile, it just like a little part of your soul dies with every step.
Oh, that one big large stick crack near the base of your stand, or the worst thing in the world is like when you like touch that first step and then that's when that deer blows. You're just like, great. They just waited. They watched me for a while and then they really got a good look and good sniff of me. And that's just like it's the worst way to start off. But I have had, going back to that one deer that I was telling you about when I shot it near those, like the motorcycle area, I had a doe, I bet she blew at me 30 times that morning at 20 yards. And then, opening day, it's just so disheartening. 20 minutes later, shot him,
Wow.
You got seed equity. You never know. You can walk out there, this is stupid. I'm gone. But stuck it out, shot at that point, the biggest buck I'd ever shot.
It's incredible. Yeah. You just got to give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any piece of your puzzle, any part of your big buck program for hunting during the rut for like November and on that we haven't touched on that you find like really critical to how you have success? That if someone was trying to understand the Jim Bouchard way to kill bucks during the rut that we haven't covered yet?
The main thing that allows me to be in areas where bucks are going to be during the rut is just 100% all the scouting I do in the winter and spring. 100%. What did they do last year during the rut? That's where they're going to be. And that's why typically a lot of my spots, like they're good year to year, because it's where they're going to be. So I know they're there because I found it months before. I didn't have to worry about bumping them or anything like that. It's just straight up preparation, because I know you have a chance down there to scout fields with binos and spotting scopes and all that kind of stuff. I don't even have that as an option because on my spot doesn't make any sense. So my stuff is basically done by turkey season. Turkey season's done. I don't really need to go look. I might do a quick check, like just to verify, like, where am I going to prioritize, especially if, is there acorns? Did that tree have apples? Does that guy look like he's hunting there anymore? I check those things. My decisions have been made by the time turkey season is done. That's when I put my time in. Just hours and hours and hours of walking around late, early spring scouting.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of sets up, let's imagine that you have a guy or girl who has hunted for a while and they've had kind of middle of the road success. They've killed some deer here and there, but they have never been the person who consistently fills their buck tag every year, but they really want to take that step up. And this person lives in northern Michigan or northern Wisconsin or northern Minnesota or the big woods of Kentucky or Pennsylvania, somewhere where there's a lot of cover, not as many deer. So they relate to your story. And they would love to have a sheet of paper with 5 steps on this paper. It's like the blueprint for success in this kind of place. And you are going to be the author of this paper for this person.
Oh boy.
And if I'll force you into step 1 is postseason scout extensively, as you just described. Maybe that's step number 1 to this blueprint. And let me tighten this even further and just say, this is going to be like rut related stuff to have success during this time period when folks are listening. What would the next 3 to 4 rules or steps be on this blueprint that you would write down? It could be things we've already talked about, of course, if you want to summarize some of those things, or if there's something new, you can add anything else you want to the list. But what's basically what we're going to leave everyone today with, this Bouchard blueprint. Walk me through the final steps on this blueprint.
I can see my friends making fun of that comment already when I see them next time. The one thing that we haven't really talked about, because we've talked primarily about like where you go. And I think one thing that you really have to focus on is that, besides the scouting, is that when it comes down to it, you actually have to get it done. Like that's one thing we've like looked past, and like that's the thing that keeps me up, and the reason I have a little 10-yard shooting spot in here and all my stuff over here, I am so afraid to screw up my one shot.
Yeah.
I'm horrified of it. Like it is what keeps me like constantly at shooting and constantly at scouting. Is like, I have to be ready. And that's why it's such an unbelievable feeling when it does happen, is because like, you got one shot. I mean, 300 some odd days a year, you're waiting. Like, you better not screw up, because not only if you do screw up, like you might be shot for the rest of that year.
Yeah.
But you know how it hurts. I mean, you talk about tear your soul out. I mean, it's horrible. And I am so motivated by that fear of screwing up. So if somebody wants to shoot good deer, I hope you're on top of your game to be able to do it during the moment of truth. Like, you have to have that part, because I don't care where you sit. I don't care if you go to the best spot on the planet. If you can't kill it, you're wasting your time anyway. It doesn't matter if you scout and all that stuff. Like, are you ready when that everything comes down and your brain doesn't even work anymore? Will you be able to kill it? And part that helps me is like, I don't have to shoot 50. That definitely helps me. That makes me more effective. But, like, will I be ready? Will I not be scrolling on my phone? And when that deer comes out and does a little last minute move, did you get an arrow in him that killed him? So I think one thing I always tell, because I'm in education and I see a lot of pictures on phones and kids shoot and all that kind of stuff. It's like, get yourself ready to get the job done if it does happen. That's step one. You have to have the ability to do so. And that's something we haven't really talked about. We talk more about scouting. So yeah, the scouting, and then, okay, are you efficient with the actual job of killing that animal? Obviously, like, I would have it, like, whenever you give me a list, I'd have to sit there on a whiteboard and like weed out my list and going, no, that doesn't make any sense. Nope, this should be 4. Nope, this should be 2. Obviously I would have to, because if I'm really up to this challenge, I'd be like, can I hang out with that person? Like, can they come stand where I go? Okay, this is a good spot. Or like, I have killed stuff here. Like, what do you see? Like, would you ever sit here? Or, hey, show me where you're sitting. Show me where you're sitting. Why did you choose this spot? And I could go through the things like, okay, this is why this would be a rough spot to get it done. I would prefer to do that, like firsthand. Maybe that's the teacher in me, but it's like that. This is why this isn't going to work effectively, and be able to go this, and this. Like, this is why this spot works for me. Like, they will never see me there. I will never get picked off there. They can't get behind me. This spot's going to be good. If I have a west wind, I am good for the year without anything being blown out of here. That's why that's there. So I think going back to the seed equity thing is like how many little micro mistakes I've made. I would try to show them, because that's what you're always trying to do as a mentor, is like how do we reduce the mistakes that somebody makes, which is perfect now. I mean, there's so many ways to find those things out by listening to podcasts and reading people's books and looking at all these things. Yeah. So I would if I was given this challenge, which I'm totally going around your list, like I'm like not answering your question whatsoever.
Hey, it's as all good politicians do. You reframe it. You reframe it the way you want to, and it's great.
Yeah. So I mean, I would really like to just like, okay, let's see your spot first. Let's look at one of mine. Like, what is going to get you in a spot that's going to, and the other thing too is, before we get to like, I want to shoot a big deer, let's shoot deer. Yeah. I know you and Tony talk about this a bunch. I like shooting deer. I like everything with shooting deer. I like processing the deer. I like dragging the deer. I like my daughter coming with me. I like my friends coming with me. I don't need it to be, I don't consider it a failure of a season not shooting a 120-inch deer. I mean, that is like an amazing goal, and I'd love to be able to pull it off all the time. I don't, but I'm not sad if I had a cool morning. It's an awesome rut. He's coming in on a doe, cruising 11 o'clock. I mean, it was like, that is the opportunity is what I'm seeking. So if I was going to have a person like, let's shoot some deer, and I take them to those spots, like, let's get a chance to shoot them. Because honestly, I would not take a rookie to my spots, because they probably hate hunting. Right. Because they just, it wouldn't be fun. It just would not be fun. Let's go to some of those borderline areas, maybe a little further out of that bedding area, where, a 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks are going to be out there a little earlier, maybe some does, and get some deer under your belt before you start focusing on stuff that is back in the timber. Because it really is, in a lot of cases, you'd never want to be a camera person with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine a spot like that. I've sat in many of those growing up, and still to this day. So let's end it with this, Jim.
Yeah.
Let's imagine that someone is listening to this in our home state of Michigan on the day it comes out, which, as I said, was November 14th. This is gun season eve. What is your single most important message you want to give to someone on gun season eve, if they are listening on that particular day? One tip or one reminder, one parting message. What do you want to tell folks?
I think when it comes to rifle season, it's such like a romanticized thing for me based on my tradition. I know you dig it. I've read your stuff, and camp is the thing for me when it comes to rifle. And what I think is like the coolest thing about rifles, like I know when that alarm clock goes off in the morning, there's hundreds of dudes, well, hundreds of hunters that are so amped up, like they get their stomach hurts, like, and I just think it's a cool thing. Like everybody's on the same page. It's like, is this going to be my day?
Right.
Is my number going to be pulled today? You know, and what I can't stress is like enjoy that feeling and like make sure that it's going on and on and on. Like I know you're with your sons, it's like that is. I looked up to my uncles and stuff going on opening day and their stories coming back. I mean, they were gods to me.
Yeah.
You know, enjoy that part of it. You know, I mean, killing a buck is fantastic. There's nothing like bringing a buck. Like our family buck pull back in the day was the place to be. I mean, there's no greater honor than to be the guy that got to back his truck up and drop that deer off and hang it in front of your uncles and cousins. You know, and then on the other side of that is if your number isn't drawn, you know, the people that did get their chance, you know, celebrate with them. You know, that is just like the absolute most important thing. By this time, your work is done. You're sitting where you're sitting. You've been in camp. You're going to be in camp for a couple of days. Man, enjoy the absolute like majesty of the opening day in Michigan because that's the jam. You know, deer aren't really doing deer things anymore. You're playing the lottery now, and enjoy it with everybody around you because silly things happen when it comes to the rifles going off. Yeah,
might as well have some fun.
Yeah, it's not even like a hunting tip. It's just like that. That's why I go to camp. I just can't wait to see, you know, so-and-so's son got his first deer. Like Uncle so-and-so got the biggest deer of his life. He's 70, you know, I mean, all these, and then the collective stories. I mean, that's why we're there. Yeah. You know, that's why we're there.
That's the good stuff, Jim. I appreciate you taking time to do this. I appreciate you sharing your insights and experiences, and I hope we will be reading more of your stories in various hunting publications. I've enjoyed what I've read from you so far. Looking forward to more in the future, and I'm sure you're going to have some good stories coming off of the 2024 season since it's been a banner year.
Yeah, it has been. Well, thanks. Right, I really appreciate it. I mean, it's an honor to be a part of this.
Hey man, right back at you. I'll be bugging you in future weeks and years to come, continuing to try to pick your brain and fill some Upper Michigan tags one of these years.
Sweet, come on up.
All right, and that's a wrap. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for being here with me. Good luck out there in the woods. If you are kicking off a gun season here, maybe tomorrow in Michigan or somewhere else soon, good luck out there. Please be safe. Enjoy your time. Spend time with your friends and family. Remember, camaraderie, community, all of that stuff is what this is all about. Get out there with your kids, your family members, your friends, and soak it all up. So until then, until next time, stay wired to hunt.
It's that time of the year again. I'm back. Marcus Kenyon, how are you, you son of a gadwall? You look terrible. I'm just kidding, or am I? I'm sorry I'm late. I crashed my recumbent bicycle into the side of a Quiznos, and I know what you're thinking. I am as sober as a newborn blue crab. I swear to you, this is just kombucha. I'm watching the gut health. You gotta do it as you get older. Also, I'm wearing this ankle bracelet that makes a beep beep sound if I have a drop of the stuff. Also alerts the authorities, who in turn alert my parole officer, so there'll be none of that in the studio today. I promise you. Let's get go. Oh, you're queuing it up already. Okay, thought we'd learned a lesson this year, but I guess not. Here we go.
I love those B.I.G. big white tails. Those stinky rotten B.I.G. big white tails. I love those B.I.G. big W-H-I-T-E tails. I love those B.I.G. big white tails.
Big white tails, big white tails, big white tails are great. Oh, what fun it is to sit in a freezing cold tree all day. Big white tails, big white tails, big white tails are great. Oh, what fun it is to sit in a freezing cold tree all day. Dashing through the woods, for the morning light turns gray. Across the fields and draws, creeping all the way. Shh, 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 I climb into the tree. Big bucks are on the way. What fun it is to sit and wait for a gosh darn deer all day. Oh, big... I'm sorry, what is this? Pizzicato strings? Who do you think I am, Enya? Get this out of here. I don't want to hear it. Thank you. Big white tails, big white tails, big white tails are great. Oh, what fun it is to sit in a freezing cold tree all day. My hopes and dreams are high. The rut is finally here. Mark said it's the most wonderful time to kill a white-tailed deer. Pinch points and petting's where you'll find me hanging 20 feet in a tree. Grunt tubes my bow and Spectre camo, this really can't be beat. A day or two ago, I thought that this was fun. But now I'm frozen to my seat and the good times, they are gone. I've ate up all my snacks. My hands and toes are numb. And when I climbed down from my stand, that son of a buck decided to come.
I love those B.I.G. big white tails. Those stinky rotten B.I.G. big white tails.
I love those B.I.G. big W-H-I-T-E tails. I love those big white tails all day. I don't know why this is happening, I swear to God. Oh, officer, what seems to be the problem here? Oh, this? I don't know why this is happening. It must be a malfunction. You know, sometimes this happens when the batteries run low. You don't need to smell that. That's just kombucha. Okay, yes, you've got me. It's Everclear and Pacific Cooler Capri Sun. I am so sorry. I don't know why my life has brought me here. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Enjoy the rut or whatever. Good luck. Boys, good to see you. Hayden, it's been a while. Hey, sorry I'm late. I crashed my Pontiac Aztek into a light pole and had to walk the rest of the way, but I'm here now. That's what matters. Can you give me a glass of scotch, please, Hayden? Just 2 rocks in there. I don't like ice. We're starting already. This is happening. Okay, just give me the glass. Thank you. Okay, here we go. It's the most wonderful time to kill deer. With the rut now just starting and dashing and darting and lanes cut and cleared. It's the most wonderful time to kill deer. There's far too much ice in this glass. It's the happiest season of all. There's got to be at least 12 cubes. With grunting and bleeding and cold fronts and sleeting, the last weeks of fall. It's the happiest season of all. There'll be pictures for posting and bragging and boasting and truck beds with big bucks in tow. There'll be narrow missed stories and tales of near glories of booner bucks missed with our bows. It's the most wonderful time to kill deer. Not just one, maybe 2. There'll be no does of blowing and luminox glowing and blood trails so clear. It's the most wonderful time to kill deer. Hey, excuse me, can I have a napkin, please? I just spilled some scotch on my loafers. I can't have dirty loafers in the studio. Yeah, thank you. Tailgate beers for drinking and big bucks a slinking and chasing and scent checking does. There'll be fighting and scraping and no more escaping and arrows shot true hitting home. Key change? What? No one told me. It's the most wonderful time to kill deer. I was very unprepared for this. There'll be much morning sitting and cold fronts hitting the dawn crisp and clear. It's the most wonderful time. Oh, the most wonderful time. Yes, the most wonderful time to kill deer. There's too much ice in the glass. 2 rocks.